Good afternoon. The August 4th session of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust will be in order. First item on the agenda is the minutes, approval of the minutes from the July 21st meeting.
Move the minutes.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes of the meeting. Other comments or questions? Hearing none, voting please. Minutes are approved. Next item is the consent docket.
Move approval subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Are there matters to be discussed separately? Hearing none, voting please. Consent docket's approved. Next item, concurrence docket. Couple of items.
Move approval subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the concurrence docket. Is there discussion on either of the two items on the concurrence docket?
Mr. Chairman, I want to point out that item B is a joint agreement with the Airport Trust about some geophysical investigations that will be going on in South Oklahoma City. So we looked at it in detail. They've provided distance around our important piping. We're not expecting any problems. Want you to know this is a carefully constructed permit, looking at all the kinds of issues that might occur in an urban area, and particularly with water and airports.
Do they think there's additional resources
Yes.
out there?
Okay, any questions or other further comments about that? Hearing none, voting please. Concurrence docket's approved. Next item. Items to be considered individually. The first one is item 5A. It's operation and maintenance agreement with the city and the Partners for Animal Welfare to maintain and operate a dog park on the Hefner Reservation.
Marsh, is this renewal? This is the same group we've been dealing with from day one?
It is the same group that brought us the dog park, and they continue to be very successful.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 5A. Voting please. Motion approved. 5A is approved. 5B, resolution recommending Oklahoma City designate free fishing days. Any comments?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve.
Marsh, where did this idea come from?
This came, I believe, from the Game and Fish Commission. And
I believe it came from Councilman Greenwell.
did it?
Yes.
Wow.
I brought it up just so that we would coincide with the state's free fishing days, eliminate any confusion among potential.
Thank you. So the Water Trust sees this, the funds that are collected from fishing fees from fishing permits that go into, are collected by the Water Trust and then are transferred to the Parks Department for operation of their facilities. So I think that you specifically see this because those are your fees and you get to take a look at it. That was kind of casual, but.
Any further comments on free fishing? Hearing none, voting please. Next item, item C. This is an ordinance concerning bow fishing. Is that one of the things? Archery fishing?
So the way I understand this is we're placing restrictions on the size, we're changing the size of fish that can be caught and kept. And again, this is a Game and Fish Commission item.
Move approval.
Do very many people fish with bows and arrows?
More than you might think.
Yes.
All right. Have a motion and a second to approve item C. Voting please. Item C is approved. Item D, presentation by Public Financial Management.
Mr. Chairman, our PFM is represented, as always, by Dennis Whaley.
We're going to have a presentation, or? Oh, it's on your screens, okay. Good afternoon, I'm Dennis Whaley with Public Financial Management. You should have a brief presentation in front of you. We're going to talk a little bit about financing the capital improvement plan. So on page 2, a little history of the CIP. Over the last 5 years, Aquit spent $506 million on capital programs. That's about $101 million a year. Over the next 10 years, Aquit will probably spend about $2.28 billion, which is about $228 million a year. So we're looking at a big change. On page 3, we have a pie chart, and what you'll notice is on a percentage basis, there's not a lot of change between debt and pay-go. But when it comes to dollars, there's quite a big difference. So what's causing this increase in the CIP? The biggest component of it is the Atoka Pipeline Project. The Atoka Pipeline Project will bring additional water to Oklahoma City, and it's going to be a 66-inch pipeline instead of a 66-foot pipeline. That might be cost prohibitive to have a 66-foot pipeline. But it will run 100 miles, and it will be parallel to the existing pipeline. So how do we fund the CIP today? We fund it from our commercial paper program, which has done a fantastic job of providing low-cost financing to the utility. That program started as a $75 million program in 2006, was expanded to $125 million in 11, and then grew to $150 million in 2013. So it has been a wonderful financing tool. We've also used state revolving funds and PAYGO, which is the use of Aquit cash to finance the CIP. So our challenge now is finding methods to finance this larger capital plan. Aquit, one of the challenges Aquit has faced is we have to have capacity in place before we can award a project. So even if we don't spend the cash, if the trust awards a $50 million project, we either have to have cash or capacity in our commercial paper program or bond proceeds available to finance that project. So as our projects get larger, the CP program may not be big enough to take care of all of those needs. And the other reason is, we need a method to avoid the project delay, not having financing when engineering needs to move forward with a particular project. So what is the task we're about to undertake? We're going to analyze the financing scenarios that are available to us for the 10-year CIP. We want to determine the most cost-effective method to finance the CIP. And one very important key to this is to come up with a method that is the most cost-effective to ratepayers. Whatever we can come up with that causes the least need for rate adjustments. And of course, our analysis and whatever method we come up with needs to abide with state law, trust, and indenture requirements. So on page 8, and this is not an exhaustive list, this is just some ideas of ways of financing tools that we may put together in combination to finance the CIP. State revolving fund loans, Aquit staff has worked very hard with the Oklahoma Water Resources Board to get additional funding for projects. We're going to look at whether there's any value in some direct bank loans, an expansion of the commercial paper program. It's highly likely that that will be one of the tools we use as a larger commercial paper program. We may go back to issuing some new money bonds just because we don't have enough capacity under the CP program. Some subordinate lien financing. We'll look into the possibility of some public-private partnerships. Is there a way that the private sector can help us with our needs over the next 10 years? We also will look at some utilities have used century bonds, 100-year bonds. And then there's a new program called the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. and maybe there are some opportunities, that's a federal program, maybe some opportunities for us to get some financing through that program.
Did you say 100-year bonds? There are people that have sold those?
Some have sold 100-year bonds. Off the top of my head, I just can't see how that's something we're going to want to do, but, we just want to throw everything against the
No,
wall. and kind
I'm
of
just
see
amazed that someone would want to commit their money at these low interest rates for 100 years.
For 100 years. Wow. You're not around.
Maybe we ought to sell as many as we can at this
Well, maybe
current
so,
climate, you know?
and of course, you're not around to get your principal back when it matures, so. So on the last page, deliverables, there will be a written report. It will go through all of the scenarios that we run, talk about the strengths and challenges of each one of the scenarios. I'm sure we will have many things we need to weigh as we decide what the best path forward is. PFM will give a recommended strategy and discuss with you why we feel that might be the best path forward, and also talk about any necessary fee adjustments with the scenarios that we look at.
What is the earliest that we think we'll need new expanded capacity?
We're there now,
Okay.
so we're at a point where it's time to begin the process.
Are we not doing any projects or not moving forward with anything now because we can, or we're just preparing because
The
shortly
issue-
we're running out of runway?
Yeah, the CIP is 2.25 times larger on average annually than it historically is, going to 228 million compared to 101. And so as we go forward, we want to make sure that we have the ability to stay on pace,
Right.
getting the projects done. So
Okay.
the timing is
Okay.
appropriate now that we've done the rate adjustments to bring forward the financing strategy.
Thank you.
We do not.
Move to strike.
Second.
Motion and a second to strike. Voting, please. Are there items from trustees?
I think we need to go back to item D2. I don't believe we passed the resolution, did we?
We have to,
Move to receive.
yeah, we do.
It's a resolution.
Yeah, there's a resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We need a motion on the resolution
Yes.
authorizing the additional services.
Move the resolution.
Motion and a second to approve item D2. Voting, please. It's approved. Now, are there matters from trustees? General Manager's report.
So in your packet this afternoon, we have what is kind of a wrap-up for fiscal year 2015. We'll bring you more formal documents, of course, as they're prepared. Generally, income was down, as you might expect, with a very, very wet year. We were at about $5.8 million below forecast in water revenue and $4.3 million below for wastewater, for a total of about $10 million. Expenses offset that for the most part. In general, we finished the year well, whether that was because a couple of capital projects cost less or operations cost less by about $8 million, for example. It was a combination of things that leave us in pretty good shape. We do believe, again, we've seen a good response to conservation. Things are, I think, that's a good thing for us overall. We'll be continuing to watch that information as we go forward, because it is a long-term trend that we want to make certain we have a good handle on. Otherwise, things are progressing. Mr. Semendi's begun prosecution of this fiscal year's capital program with its usual diligence, and I would be happy to answer other questions. We are, part of Mr. Semendi's work is we are prosecuting a couple of jobs, a couple of projects that are emergencies stemming from the storm. We've already acted on a couple of smaller sewer repair projects where the storm washed away the creek. We have the large 96-inch sewer that we're going to be restabilizing, building back up its protection from the river, where east of town we've got some serious erosion of the North Canadian River. Mr. Johnson is designing for us that project as well as a structural repair to the Atoka pipeline. And the reason I want to mention that today is just so you know that the pipeline is out of service while we make this repair. We believe it may be November before the pipeline goes back into service, and we'll be bringing you information about that as the design gets complete. At this point, we're working on the process with the Corps of Engineers. Since we're going to be building something in the river, our plan is to build a separate new support structure and take away the old one. When we're done building the new support, we think that'll be the most effective to prosecute and take the least risk with the pipeline. Lake Draper will be fine, but Lake Draper's level will be dropping. We will be compensating. We have the Overholser plant in operation today, as well as the Hefner plant. Lake Hefner is still virtually full. We're in pretty good shape given the wet weather that we've had, and not expecting any problems, just watching it very carefully and going to be working to manage our water supplies as well as we can at this time.
How long do you think it'll take?
We think the pipeline will be back in operation by December the 1st. We have experience with the outages. We forecasted the outage and also what it will take to bring the lake back up to relative full conditions. By the way, we'll be saving a bunch of money on power this summer. Upside of that.
Is this the first general manager's report in like 28 months where we haven't had to talk about lake levels?
It is.
So moved.
Second.
That's it. Oh, citizens be heard. I looked out there and I didn't see one citizen, except maybe Clowers. No citizens be heard. Hearing none, we'll adjourn.